your F-16s really aren't doing so well up there, you know.
No, they're not. I mean, it's just kind of. I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of a given with me in command. One is that I'm always going to have audio issues when I stream,
Oh yeah.
and two is that my fighters can't hit the broadside of a barn if it was right in front of them. I mean, I've had Amrams miss from like perfect, 6 o'clock, perfect, 6 o'clock, position, and I've had Amrams miss from, close in.
Yeah. Okay.
The what the dice roll giveth, the dice roll taketh away as well.
Yeah.
Well, if
Yeah.
it makes you feel any better, I think one of my biggest struggles with command is I grew up in an army where the last I guess it's almost 18 years now of the global war on terror, where actually losing people was unacceptable, and that's how I play my scenarios. So when I lose fighter jets, like it's just unacceptable to me. And I really have to kind of gird myself for the fact that this is World War III and losses are going to happen, and this isn't the global war on terrorism military. So I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Oh, I think it does.
And the as I had said earlier, HHour is not a scenario where a player can win in the traditional sense. The scenario or the player is really fighting not to lose too badly, if you will. And the Soviets have planned this attack fairly well, and it is overwhelming. So it's a matter of holding it together. It's hard to do a defensive scenario for the player to play on defense, and make it a credible offense to attack them. But I think HHour does that okay.
Yeah, that's actually been something that I've encountered in a couple scenarios too. Is how do you have kind of the player put the because most scenarios seem like the player is always on the offense, and I find it's a lot less scenarios where the player actually has to play defense, where it's not some overwhelming, where it's not an overwhelming force against them.
Yeah.
Well, looks like can't tell. Looks like I got two of the nunchucks.
Yep.
My sub looks like it's pulling back. Probably needs to surface here and charge its batteries.
It's probably just determined it can't keep up to 30 knots.
Yeah. Well, I got two missile groups closing in on them. At some point, I lost my last boat from the other group. And I don't think I actually have any more fighters that are ready to go, so that's
Looks like you got another Dash 8 taking off from one of the airports up there.
trying to get as far away as they can.
Yeah, I remember in Tom in Red Storm Rising that he mentioned somewhere in the book that the Norwegian Air Force is basically annihilated in the first week of the war.
I thought it was like the first 2 days or something like that.
It might have been the first 2 days.
Yeah, I thought it was really quickly. I haven't read RSR in a while, but I'm pretty sure it was like in the first day of the war or something like that. Or at least first couple days of the war.
Yeah.
Either way, it's
And
really quickly.
I think playing Bart scenarios, you realize like how small the Norwegian Air Force actually is. Now they have some depth in how they're deployed all the way down to Oslo, but there's not many of them, and we try to put that in the book as well.
That and the forces arrayed against them are just a lot more than they basically have the entire Kola Peninsula arrayed against them.
Mm-hmm.
With, like you said, yeah, they have defense and depth, but defense just quality has a. Or quantity has a quality all of its own, I believe is the term.
Yeah, and
I think so.
Yeah, that's the term. But some of the Soviet forces against you are pretty quality as well.
Yeah, that's true.
SU-27s and MiG-29s.
And today, I think the same as back in the 90s. I think we have an image of the Russians and the Soviets that they're idiots, and they certainly are not. Like they're as eager to survive and to win as we are, and I think Bart scenarios modeled that really well.
So, Joel, how did you go? I know Bart said I think he was the one who came to you with the idea for the book, but what was your reaction when he actually kind of came to you? Were you open to it, or obviously you were open to it, but
Yeah, so I was. He approached me at a really fortuitous time. So I'd finished one very stressful point in my Army career, and the Army had been nice enough to send me to graduate school. So I was playing civilian for 2 years between being in Afghanistan and going to be a university professor, and that's when he approached me, and that's also a point in your career where the Army is actually encouraging you to be more creative. And I never actually imagined myself as a very creative person. But when I started writing the AARs that caught Bart's attention, and people started to really respond to them, at the same time as the Army was telling me, you need to be more creative, I was getting some positive reinforcement that, hey, you actually are kind of creative. And Bart was kind of the one who kind of provided that positive reinforcement, and since then we've been partnering, and it's just been a lot of fun.
So I don't know how much about this you guys are gonna be able to talk about, but what was I mean, obviously Matrix, let you guys do it, but what was the first conversation with them like? Of actually getting the licensing for it. And
I was in the UK with work, and I called up Ian and his father JD at Slytherin, and it said I wouldn't mind meeting you, and they took me out to lunch, and I mentioned it there, and they were both very positive right from the start.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so yeah, I've been there a couple times. My work brings me in all over the place, but that was very fortuitous that I'd be able to swing by.
And they've been super supportive throughout.
Yeah, that's true too. I've not met Dimitri yet. I'd like to at some point. I mean, he's the designer behind the whole game. But yeah.
Yeah, one of these days I'd really like to buy Dimitri a beer and sit down and chat with him.
That's right.
In person.
Yeah, so yeah, the Slytherin's been very helpful, very gung-ho about the whole thing. They're really good.
So I know HHour's EBook. Did you guys actually get physical books made as well?
Yes, you can order a physical book from either Amazon or Barnes and Noble or something like that. It's a thing called print on demand.
Okay.
When you order it, it doesn't exist, but in the time they allow for shipping, they also do the printing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And when they sent us the proofs, I'm not going to lie, I was a bit impressed with the heft of the book. In fact, I'm sitting here in my barracks room in Bulgaria right now, and I'm holding the book in my hand. I didn't actually get it till a few days ago just because of the mail delay, and I'm pretty pleased with the physical copy.
Yeah, I bought the ebook off of Amazon, but I've actually been considering buying the actual physical book as well and adding it to my shelf.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I ordered a box of a dozen of them. I've got to send a few around to folks that have helped us out, and yeah, it's a good sized box.
Speaking of proofs, guys, I did find a spelling mistake in when I was reading this morning.
All right, well, send it to us, and we'll.
Gonna have to get all the physical books reprinted.
So yeah, well, there's an advantage to print on demand. So several of the guys, some of the guys that play test the scenarios, Andrew J in particular on the forums, who's religious about play testing the scenarios, gives excellent feedback. So he sent me an email this morning with a handful of things. So we'll fix them up, and then once they're fixed, whether it's print or ebook, it will be good. Yeah. So send us an email.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah. Good to see that even books can be patched.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The age we live in.
Well, that's one of the big advantages of print on demand, right? So the book doesn't exist until you hit order.
So who, if you guys don't mind me asking, who's the actual? Is there an actual publisher when you guys do print on demand with a book, or?
We own a publishing company.
Okay.
Called Ursus Rising. But it's just through Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever you order it from.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Amazon also printed books.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the truth is, so we started our own publishing company for this, which a lot of authors are doing these days. But we had the choice at one point to keep pursuing like a big name publishing house, or to go the route that we did. And my last job before my current job in the Army actually allowed me to get in contact with a few big name authors, including August Cole and Max Brooks, and both of their suggestions were to go the route that we did, and I think we're both pretty happy that we did at this point.
Yeah, it's a lot of extra fiddling with things we didn't expect to, but we've got a lot more control over our life.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I've never published a book, but I've heard, I follow different authors here and there, and it seems to be self-publishing seems to be more and more the way people are going.
There's some advantages and disadvantages, and I'm not talking for ourselves. I'm talking more for the consumers of books, the people, readers. And I've experienced this myself as a reader. This is my first time actually publishing a book, but and I don't think Bart or I either want to sound arrogant or stuck up, but that's something that we discussed. Is we think we have a good story to tell, and we think we have a good book to sell. And I think both of us feel like if we were publishing this book in, say, 1985, that we would be right up there with Red Storm Rising or the Third World War or some of the big names. But since we're publishing in 2019, when anybody can get on Amazon and publish a book, we have to make people aware that this is a quality book, and we're not just anybody who wrote 50,000 words and then uploaded it to Amazon.
No, it's 203,000 words.
I think I've got some helicopters coming in on me.
Yeah, I wonder what they're going to do.
Yeah, I wonder what they're going to do. That is still the one scenario. I have a U.S. Army cab scenario, roughly outlined, but I've never actually been able to make it work.
Blast Pop, the name of the book is... Sorry, I'm just answering somebody on the chat. For Blast Pop, the name of the book is Northern Fury HHour. It's on Amazon. All right, sorry, Joel.
Brian, are you talking about an air cav scenario, like a U.S. Army air assault scenario?
I was thinking like Apaches. I tried to do I've kind of looked at it different ways. I was thinking, hang on a second, I'm pulling up the link for the book off of Amazon real quick, the link in chat. There's the link for it, Blast Route. I was actually thinking more kind of a recon attack scenario, and I don't know, I don't really feel like the command ground modeling is good enough to do it?
So, Brian, I'll tell you, I've actually, if I were to build a scenario, what you're thinking of is actually something that'd be fascinating for me, just based on my experience of my last year in the Army and the way the Army's going. Like the Army's, obviously, we've spent the last 18 years or so with the global war on terror, where Apaches are the ultimate weapon with really nothing that can touch them. And you know, once you get an Apache support, then the battle's over. But where we are now, thinking of fighting near peer threats, that's not the case anymore. And so now, instead of employing Apaches in ones and twos, we employ them in companies and even battalions. But you can't just send a battalion of Apaches someplace to kill a battalion of tanks. It takes so much planning and so much preparation. And I think that's honestly a place, and I just want to encourage you, I think that's a place where command can shine, where you need to start thinking in terms of what artillery can I use to suppress what air defenses to get the Apaches into where they need to be so that they can kill the one or two things that I actually want them to kill.
And my experience as a forward observer, artillery forward observer during the Cold War, I specifically remember a scenario where I was in the divisional reserve, sitting hull down behind a ridge line, where I was looking down on a company plus of Apaches, engaging with probably about 70 guns onto a target, and controlling two A-10s on. And that's the sort of battle that we've got to look forward to, as well as in the rearview mirror from.
Yeah. Now, thinking something that I don't know that command models very well, that I think would be relevant in this scenario, is that when you drop, 60 rounds of artillery within a few hundred meters of an air defense site, that air defense site is probably going to pack up and move someplace else. Whereas in command, without putting a ton of work into Lua, that air defense site is going to be just as effective after receiving that artillery fire as they were before, which I think that's one of the limits of the simulation.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was finding was, you can't, you can destroy enemy air defenses, you can't really suppress air defenses.
Exactly.
That, and I was, I guess keep staying on that subject, which is definitely not HHour, is really what sort of targets like a single, U.S. Army combat aviation brigade would go after, by itself, and, would it work in association with artillery and with the rest of a division, or would it basically be assigned, independent operations, so to speak?
I think doctrinally it's meant. It is a maneuver force, and it is meant to work in cooperation with all other assets. So, if you recall the Battle of Khafji in Gulf War I, where there was an Iraqi motor rifle regiment advancing towards a Marine force, that's where you would employ an attack helicopter battalion, which they did, with A-10s, with other probably F-16s and F-15 Echoes, and artillery. You use the artillery to stop them or disrupt them, and then you coordinate the air and AH to annihilate them.
Well, you guys have definitely given me a little bit to think about on that. When I finish up El Dorado, I'll take another look at it.
If you dig up the U.S. Army air-land battle from the 80s, it gives you a good example of how these elements are used.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And it, I believe the tactic was JAT, Joint All Arms Attack. JAAT, I think. But that's going back a day or two.
Again, this has all happened before. It will all happen again.
Yeah. And sorry if I'm sounding like a doctrine dude, but that was my last job in uniform, was teaching this stuff. So.
Oh no, I'm fascinated about this sort of stuff. I never got the chance to actually serve in uniform, but I still enjoy kind of the military history aspect of it and learning all that I can. So no, I find perspectives like that interesting.
When it comes down to it, what I try to tell my soldiers is that whereas the details of tactics get pretty complicated, the actual concept of tactics hasn't changed in about 6,000 years, and that you fix the enemy in your front and you hit them from the side, and pretty much any tactic you have is a variation of that.
That's so true.
Yeah, well, it looks like we're gonna kill the last two Namchucks. After my submarine cowardly turned away. So what if they're going at 30 knots and you can't keep up? You pursue. No retreat?
Yep. Yeah, it's your battle is looking
Grim?
well, a little bleak, yeah.
I mean, that is a lot of red air. If I was Belugan, this is where I'm supposed to drop in like a nuke on top of everything, right?
Yeah.
Still remember a comment he made during one of his live streams where what was his comment? He learns geography by bombing things.
Learns geography by changing it.
That's how we Americans learn geography too, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like to think that I knew quite a bit about geography without blowing stuff up, but I know a lot of positions on the Kola Peninsula because I bombed them.
So I taught geography at the college level for a few years. So I consider myself a little bit of an expert in geography, but I don't think anything teaches you geography by thinking, hey, I need to attack this area. Let me go and get on Google Earth and actually look at what's around it. Like, oh my gosh, that's a city. Like, I'm not going to be able to find man pads in a city. Things like that. So I kind of agree with Belugan, to be honest.
We Joel and I have spent a lot of time on Google Earth over the last couple of years.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
So, do you see Russian and NATO air bases like in your sleep when you close your eyes?
Maybe now and then. The geometry of it all is all pretty fascinating to me.
Only after I've created them in a command scenario.
Well, my missiles failed. Oh no, looks like I did destroy a ship. That's interesting. I thought my missiles all failed, but apparently I did get a kill.
That's those jammers working again.
Yeah, and I killed the second ship too, and that's interesting. Well, no, the message log actually said, failure for both the hits, and apparently that's not. Oh no. Oh, that's the decoy. Oops. The message log's going by so fast. There's a lot of times though I enjoy just sometimes just turning off the message log and not finding out what I killed until the end.
Yeah. One point of interest: the little radar site up to the upper left near your other missile group there, the one that's been damaged. Yeah, your left of your submarine or west of your submarine.
Yep, I got him.
Yeah. So that's the North Cape, and it surprised me when Joel told me he's actually stood there.
Really?
Looking north, yeah.
Yeah, after my wife and I came back from our deployment to Iraq, we ended up taking a cruise up all the way up to Norway, and one of the places you can get off we got off was up there at the North Cape, and there's actually a little balcony built into the cliffs there at the North Cape for the Norwegian King that us commoners are not allowed to go to, and then there's a little visitor center at the actual North Cape, and if you look about 300 meters south of the visitor center, there's the radar dome.
Kind of reminds me. I live in Washington State, and we've got Cape Flattery, which is the northwesternmost part of the continental United States, and which is slowly kind of being eroded by the Pacific Ocean. And it's just kind of interesting to go up there and just kind of stand and look out. Obviously, not as cool as turning around and seeing the radar dome. Oh, look! The helicopters are attacking my my diversionary air base.
Yeah, you're gonna have to read a little bit more about that one.
Yeah, well, I am going to actually replay the scenario properly for a upcoming stream. And I'm actually thinking, since I think I'm done with Desert Storm, that I think Northern Fury is going to be the next target for me or to get through.
If you want to start with a manageable one, if you started with or played Northern Fury number 4, Cold and Lonely Place.
Okay.
That's quite manageable as far as units and tasks and that.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Northern Fury 2, X-Ray Station. Yeah, not so much.
X-Ray Station is manageable and hopeless.
Oh, so it's basically another HHour.
Of course.
So HHour tends to be unmanageable and hopeless, whereas
whereas X-Ray Station is unmanageable and hopeless.
Yeah, well, X-Ray Station is manageable and hopeless.
Oh, manageable and
so
hopeless.
so in HHour, like you're going to lose, and there's so many things going on that you're going to lose that you just can't keep track of it all. I think in X-Ray Station, you're going to lose, and you can manage everything that you're going to lose.
That's a good way of putting it.
For the most part, I hear, normally I'd have to set up, missions and cap and AWACS and all that, and it looked like, at the start of this, all that was already kind of taken care of for me, and they're all gone now. So it's really now just kind of taking my lumps and seeing what's going to get destroyed.
Yeah, go ahead, Joel.
I think what's valuable in these scenarios, and I think something that we've lost in the last 25 years from the Cold War, is at the end of the Cold War, the Russian military was in such bad state that we just developed in the West an attitude that they were a bunch of amateurs, and that and because of what happened in the Gulf War, that any war we would fight with them would just be easy. And the fact is our experience in World War II and the Cold War is just the opposite, that they are very smart, tough opponents. And they're smart, and they, I think I said before, like they want to survive and they want to win just as much as we do. And I think, again, Bart's scenarios model that really well. The enemy is not stupid. It is not suicidal. And I think someone who has to think about the reemerging threat, it's something important to keep in mind.
Yeah, the big Russian bear would, had he come across the border while the Cold War was still on, he would have been a very scary beast. A very different method of warfare to what NATO has and what we have in the West, but very effective and systemic. You can't take any one thing and say, oh, that's stupid because it can't do this or it can't do that. It's developed into a system. The Soviet or the Russian method of war was a very scientific thing, and it was a single cog in that wheel may not look impressive, but you got to look at the wheel, and when you put all the spokes together, it's a tough beast.
And the truth is, in my current assignment, where I'm able to look at not the Russian military, but the Bulgarian military, which is in many ways a microcosm of what the Soviet military used to be. They don't have many resources. They don't have all the opportunities to train like we do, but they are a tough group of soldiers, and they are good at the way that they plan to make war, even with 100th of the resources that larger militaries have. And for me, I mean, doing that intellectually was one thing, but now seeing it up close is something entirely different.
I have no F-16s ready to go. This is sad. They've all been shut down. Oh no, I do have a couple. Ride, guys, ride. Good luck.
Ride of the Valkyrie. Check down in Orland. You may have some down there.
There's Bodo. Bodo doesn't have anything ready to go.
Yeah, further south.
There's Orland. Oh!
Yeah.
Oh, how did I miss you guys? Oh!
Yeah.
Have fun. Assigned a mission. I'm just gonna have fun now. North Cap, backstop is fine, launch is screwed. Good luck, guys. Going back to what we were talking a little bit of earlier, Bart, was this is where if you could if units did carry over from scenario to scenario, I could definitely see wanting to husband your forces more, and not being just so cavalier with them as I'm being right now.
Yeah, and especially the next group down, I think, are the MLUs. So they've got Amrams.
Oh, they do have Amrams. When did the Amram B deploy?
So the Norwegians technically didn't get the Amrams until about 97, 98, but I've moved that up a bit.
When did the U.S. Air Force get Amrams?
Starting in about 89, 90.
Oh, I didn't realize it was. I didn't think the Amram happened until mid 90s actually.
It was. That's probably when most of the units were training with it most of the time, and where it became steady state. But they did have them. The U.S. Navy was a little slower because the F-18 Charlie, which started to come off the lines in 92, 93, I think, wasn't able to fire them initially. But I think the U.S. Navy started getting them in 95, but I've got them a little bit earlier. I'm trying to display the technological differences between old Cold War equipments and technologies and the new stuff, and there's nothing in my mind that shows that more starkly than the difference between an AIM-7 and an AIM-120. And when you're tangling with Alamos and Amos missiles from the Russian side, and you've got Sparrows, you're going to have problems. I mean, when you've got Amrams, you're still going to have problems, but far fewer.
DM61 said in my chat, wording the name of a city as they disappear. They had different tactic in Battle of Winterfell. Oh my god!
Oh, that's right. I got to watch the last one of those tonight.
Yeah. So, Joel, what's your critique of the battle tactics during the Battle of Winterfell? That dragons are invincible?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a pretty good critique actually written by someone other than myself. If you look around, if you look up tactical critiques of the Battle of Winterfell, there's actually some pretty good doctrinal critiques of, and pretty humorous doctrinal critiques of the Battle of Winterfell that are worth a read. But basically, it's that that you deploy your most the army of the living. Basically deployed all of their most effective forces forward without any support, and had them wiped out, and didn't keep any sort of effective reserve, and really only won because of luck. That would be my critique.
I would say that Jon Snow would have failed at Staff College. Charging into the night without reconnaissance, putting your firepower forward without protection, keeping your air power sort of in reserve. Yeah. So anyway, it was a good show.
Yeah, the same things can be said about the Battle of Wakanda, the Battle of the First and Second Death Star.
I did actually see, speaking of critiques, I did watch a video yesterday on YouTube critiquing the Battle of King's Landing. That was well, no spoilers since that's last week's episode, and I think Bart mentioned he hasn't watched it yet, so no spoilers.
No, I've watched that one. It's the last episode tonight. But it was Daenerys LeMay.
Yeah. What's funny is that I actually skipped most of the show because I found basically season 1 to be like want to gouge my eyes out boring. And so before this season started, I like skipped through like season 2, and then I skipped a couple episodes into season 3, and then I skipped like right to season like 6 and 7 and watched bits of episodes from each, so I have a general idea what's going on. But
did you read the books?
I read up to Dance of the Dragons, I think, is where I read up to.
Okay. Yeah.
And then work just kind of got busy, and it's a really long read.
Yeah, it is.
It's a really long read.
Yeah.
It's one of those, instead of playing games, if I eventually retire, instead of playing games, I'm going to finally make it through the Song of Ice and Fire books when I retire. That'll be a goal of mine.
Well, you'll have the Northern Fury book stacked up too.
Oh yeah, well no, I'll actually make it through the Northern Fury books before then. I'm just a little behind on the first book.
All right. Speaking about being behind on things, I'm gonna have to cut loose here.
All right.
Yeah. So thanks a lot. What's that?
Oh, I was gonna say I'm about ready to wrap it up too as well. So I've got things I've got to get done on a Sunday as well. So.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on, guys. Joel, especially you. I know you're another like 8 hours ahead of me, I think, right now. So
I think something like that.
Yeah. So thanks for making the time on a Sunday, especially to join. And great job with the books. I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of this one and seeing the rest of the series.
Well, we've certainly enjoyed writing them, and I enjoy making the scenarios. So that's the trick. As long as everybody's enjoying playing the scenarios and reading the books, it's great.